Experience more profitable end-to-end inventory management, pricing precision with real shopper data, efficient sourcing aligned to your strategy, AI-powered vehicle descriptions that save time and drive engagement. Experience more with vAuto by Cox Automotive.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, automakers accuse Europe of blocking U.S. pickup imports. It looks like USMCA talks will miss the July 1st deadline. And is a sedan comeback on the horizon? Buick is planning one for North America. Plus, Nissan America's chairman, Christian Meunier, talks about efforts to turn things around.
Sometimes your plan is not perfect, you adjust. That's what this industry is about, is getting clear direction, execute the plan, and then adjust when needed.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. U.S. automakers are accusing the European Union of trying to block imports of large pickups from Ford, GM, and Stellantis. That's according to the Financial Times. A move like that could violate a trade deal the EU struck with the Trump administration last year. Here's the issue. The EU is planning to tighten approval rules that allow a limited number of U.S. pickups to be sold there. We're talking about 7,000 large pickups, like the Ford F-150 and Ram 1500, sold in Europe in 2024. The clash could overshadow a broader trade deal that still hasn't been ratified by the EU. Trade tensions aren't just brewing in Europe. There's a big USMCA deadline looming in North America, and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says they're probably not going to make it. Speaking at the Hudson Institute, Greer said they'll resolve many issues, just not all of them by the July 1st deadline. The Trump administration has already started talks with Mexico, but hasn't even begun formal negotiations with Canada yet. And General Motors is bringing a sedan back to Buick's North American lineup for the first time since 2020. A source at a major GM supplier says the car will share a platform with the next-generation Cadillac CT5 and Chevrolet Camaro. And it will be built at GM's Lansing Grand River plant in Michigan. Here to talk more about it is our own John Irwin, who covers GM and its brands for us at Automotive News. John, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me.
All right, John. So a sedan, that's an interesting move coming from an automaker that has mostly abandoned that segment. Why jump back into it?
Yeah, it's interesting timing. Obviously, like you said, GM, for the most part, with a couple exceptions, has largely moved away from cars, opting more for crossovers, and obviously the big trucks that are big profit drivers for them. Buick in particular, it's been since 2020 since we've seen a sedan in the Buick lineup, with the Regal ending in 2020. Since then, it's been all crossovers. For Buick, that was a big change. Historically, you think of Buick, you think of, these coupes and sedans throughout its history. But yeah, it's been several years since we've seen that. And there are a couple factors at play, I think, as GM's kind of considering bringing back a sedan for the Buick brand. First of all, you just look at the plant where it'll be built in Lansing. It already builds sedans there, the CT5. It'll eventually build the Camaro as well on the same platform. You already have that platform there. It kind of makes sense maybe to, slap on a Buick badge on a vehicle built on that same platform. Obviously, the reason automakers, including GM, have sort of moved away, at least to a degree, from sedans is because just demand for crossovers is so high. That's going to continue, obviously. I don't think anyone expects the market for this new Buick sedan to be massive, but it's large enough where, GM feels like it's worth pursuing, it appears, just because, we've seen kind of a good amount of, persistent demand for sedans. There's some customers that, kind of prefer that. And especially that's the case now as affordability has become a bigger concern. Typically a sedan, your average sedan on the market will be a little less expensive on average than maybe a crossover SUV. That might be a factor at play as well. It's another offering. I know GM, that's something that GM's kind of keeping an eye on, is affordability. That's something that they like to keep touting as the number of vehicles of theirs that are sold below $50,000. And while this one might not be below $50K, it might end up being one of the more affordable vehicles in Buick's lineup. And we'll see what ends up happening. There are a lot of details that we still don't know, but it's kind of an interesting play. And GM clearly thinks that there's enough of a market for a sedan, even in a crossover heavy market, that makes this worth it.
And what would this mean for the Lansing Grand River plant, especially after CT4 production ends in June?
Yeah, that's kind of been a big question is kind of what's going to happen with the Lansing Grand River plant. Back in 2023 with UAW negotiations, GM committed to spending more than $1 billion to retool the plant. The idea back then was that Lansing Grand River would end up building electric vehicles. Obviously, GM, as with the rest of the industry since then, has kind of pulled back on a lot of their short to medium term EV targets, just given the lower than expected growth in sales and the pullback in incentives and that sort of thing. So it's kind of been an open question of, okay, what's going to happen with Lansing River? What are they going to build there? The CT5 is basically the only thing still slated for it after the CT4 ends in June. And so while there's still, I asked GM as part of this story, are you still committed to spending, that $1 billion plus on the plant? I got a no comment there, but they have said in the past that they're still committed to investing in that plant. As part of that might be instead retooling instead for EVs, might instead be a retooling for this next generation platform that they'll build the CT5 next generation Camaro and this new Buick sedan on. We don't know exactly yet when the Buick will start to be built, but our source says that the Camaro and the CT5 next generation will start being built in 2027. So the Buick will probably come sometime around then or maybe afterward. But it kind of provides a little bit of clarity, at least as far as what's going to happen with Lansing Grand River. It still may be underutilized to a degree. None of these vehicles are going to be super high volume or anything along those lines, but it does provide at least a little bit of stability and a little bit of an idea of what's next for that plant.
Quick prediction, John. Could this signal a broader sedan comeback?
It could. I mean, you're seeing, we've seen a little bit from, Stellantis as well, where, their executives are saying, hey, there's kind of a market for sedans. It's still a crossover heavy market. People still have their crossovers and SUVs, but there is a market for sedans, and it's proven to be relatively persistent. And I think you're going to see, I wouldn't be surprised if you see automakers at least step back into that space a little bit. Maybe not to the degree that they were before, but at least have an offering or two.
Perfect, John. So insightful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, Christian Meunier, chairman of Nissan Americas, talks about the automaker's turnaround strategy and where it's heading. That's next on Daily Drive.
Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Running a dealership today isn't just about finding the right cars. It's about finding the right cars consistently, efficiently, and at the right price. While the market keeps shifting around you, inventory management has become more complex. Vehicles come from more sources, margins are tighter, and every buying decision carries more risk than it used to. Yet, too often, inventory decisions are still made with fragmented data, disconnected tools, and limited visibility into what's actually working. The most successful dealerships are approaching inventory differently. They're managing it as a system, not a series of one-off decisions. They're looking at market data, demand signals, pricing, and acquisition opportunities together, so every move is more informed and more intentional. When inventory is managed end-to-end, teams spend less time reacting and more time acting. They can see what's selling, what's stalling, and where the next opportunity is coming from. That clarity helps reduce aging, improve turn, and protect profitability. The right vehicles are out there. The difference is having a smarter, more connected way to find them, price them, and move them. Learn how dealerships are rethinking inventory management with vAuto, and what a more confident, data-driven approach can do for your business.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Nissan has faced a turbulent few years, from leadership upheaval to sales struggles. But the brand is working on a bold turnaround plan with new leadership and a refocused approach. Our own Molly Boygan spoke with Christian Meunier, chairman of Nissan Americas, at the J.D. Power Auto Forum in New York City. They talked about Nissan's strategy for regaining momentum, the brand's product pipeline, and how Meunier is positioning Nissan for the future.
Christian Meunier, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you today.
So we just heard you on stage at New York Auto Forum here at the Javits Center, and you were talking about Nissan and your plans for the brand. You were asked about how you're feeling about the turnaround, and you said something along the lines of expecting, to have another year, you being like around 50 or 60% of the way through. So I'm wondering, how confident are you that Nissan will return to profitability in fiscal year 2026?
So in fiscal year 25, if you look at the financial results of the company at a global level, we're already in a positive operating profit. So that means the momentum is back in, but we still have a lot of work to do on the free cash flow, especially so that we generate free cash flow positive as soon as possible. And that's our mission. Our mission as a company, obviously my mission as a chairman of the region, because this region is critical for the success of Nissan going forward. So we're on it. I said 60% because I'm optimistic by nature, but it's also because we delivered a lot of good things this year. So I think the sales momentum is there. Sales are up. In the last 6 months, we've been the fastest growing brand in the US, which I'm pretty proud of the team to have delivered. The financials are much better than they used to be. We've reduced a lot of costs. So, when your revenues are up, your costs are down, and the team is very focused, and the dealers are starting to make more money than before, I think there's a lot of good things happening, and trend is everything in this world. Is it perfect? No. Are we making a dent? Yes. And I think the trend is super positive. So let's go. I think Nissan is coming back.
In terms of the path forward, I think the cost-cutting efforts are very visible and very obvious. And a greater challenge or a more complex challenge would be the revenue growth. So where are you thinking that revenue growth is really going to come from?
The revenue growth is happening. As I said, 20% up in the last 6 months in the US market. We're growing in Mexico as well. We're growing in Canada. So I think in the region overall, we're growing a lot. And I think it's really about focus. It's about focus on a few models that are doing well. So in the US specifically, we focus on the US built models. So Rogue, Pathfinder, and Frontier, and they're doing extremely well. We're growing significantly on those models. And the good news, they are tariff-free. So we're making money as well. So revenue growth, at the same time, profit growth, that's what we need to deliver.
And in terms of the tariffs, this also came up on stage. Nissan is dealing with some reliance on Mexican manufacturing and assembly. You were saying on stage that in order to sort of make up that tariff cost, you'll be focused on cost reduction. Are you talking specifically about cost reduction in Mexico, or what did you mean when you said that?
Altogether, we need to put the features and the content that the customers are willing to buy. And I think we've got lost at one point in time just putting technology for the sake of it, for technology, super complex technology that really didn't add a lot of value, but added a lot of cost. So what we're looking at is, what do the customers really want and nothing more, right? Nissan used to be a pretty simple brand, right? It was about durability, quality, reliability, safety. At the same time, it had that spice. We're not a vanilla brand. We're not an appliance brand. We need to bring some emotion to the customer. So quality, reliability, but at the same time, emotion, driving dynamics, and affordability. Affordability should be a core component of what a Nissan should be. So put the right content that the customers are willing to pay for and nothing else. That's what we're doing.
When you talk about some of those tech additions or features that were perhaps beyond what the customer was really looking for and added cost, what types of things are you thinking about?
Ultimately, it doesn't impact the customer at all. The customers won't see a difference in the most part. And the good news is we do some cost reduction, but at the same time, we deliver better quality. The quality of the product we built today is the best it's ever been in the last 25 years. It's ahead of other Asian brands. We've been number one IQS JD Power last year, and I hope we're going to get it again this year because the quality of our product is the best it's ever been. You just need to decide where you put your money, where you put the cost, and you put the cost where it brings value, nothing else. It's like powertrain. Some customers want an EV, we get them an EV. Some people want a hybrid, we'll get them a hybrid. I think you need to have a spectrum of products available to please the customers and give them what they want in terms of mobility.
And speaking of quality, I do want to ask you about the February recalls for Rogue SUVs. Why do you think that Nissan originally argued against the recall?
I don't know about the past. What I know is we take care of the customers. We're very focused on this issue. It's not a big population of cars, but we take care of the customers and we'll solve it for the customers.
And also, going back to your comment about offering consumers a diversity of powertrains, you seemed really excited about the hybrid offerings from Nissan on stage. How do you plan to sort of compete with some of the other manufacturers that have established hybrid dominance already here in the United States?
So sometimes it's an issue to be late to the party, but sometimes it gives you a little bit more time to get the best technologies at the best price. And I think that's what we're going to do with what we call e-Power Hybrid, the hybrid e-Power. It's a new technology that we're going to bring, which is very different from the traditional hybrid systems, but it delivers great fuel economy, great acceleration, super quiet. So it brings everything the customers want at an affordable price. So I think we're going to get the best technology, late maybe, but with the best for sure.
Can you say a little bit more about that? What was how was Nissan kind of using this extra time? Is it that the technology is entirely new and, sort of proprietary? Is it that it was in development and could only be applied to products later on? Can you say a bit more about that?
So with the hybrid e-Power technology that we're bringing to the US, it's the third generation. So there's been 1.5 million cars sold across the globe in Asia and in Europe. But the technology was not ready for this market. At least that's what we thought at the time. And it was important for us to get it right. And it took a little bit too long. But now we're coming in this summer. And hopefully the customers recognize the value in it.
I also want to ask you about the Honda merger. So from your perspective, what happened? Why did that not come to pass as expected?
I don't really know all the details, and it doesn't matter. I think the past is the past. I think now we're working potentially on a few projects with Honda and some others, but it's on a project basis, and that's what matters. I think we're very focused on fixing the company, on getting the Nissan back on track and get the company to shine again like it used to be shining. And we're very focused, and we're bringing Nissan back.
So is it fair to say that you are looking at partnerships more on a project-to-project level generally rather than, mergers on a larger
That's what
scale?
we do.
Okay.
That's what we do. I think the company had forgotten that scale is important in our business, in automotive. Millions of cars that you engineer, that you build, give you the scale and the cost base for you to offer a better product at a better cost for the customer. And that's what we need to deliver. So volume is important. We need to sell cars before we make money. And we had forgotten that. We're back focused on selling cars and taking care of the customers.
I think that you have a very hard job. I think that, you've come in at a time of turnaround, tariffs, this failed merger, the recalls issue. What are you most laser focused on? What area do you think is going to have the largest impact in terms of this turnaround and making the brand shine, as you said?
It's pretty exciting, by the way, because I think we're in a very, very exciting industry that is always in motion. It's never a dull moment. You never get bored. It's been a little hectic in the last few months, for sure, for Nissan, but also for the industry altogether, between the EV, the tariff, and everything else. So it's been pretty hectic. At the same time, it's pretty exciting. That's what makes it exciting to be an executive. And the day when I get bored, I'll do something else. But I don't have a minute to get bored. What is really exciting for me is to work with a team, build a vision, a direction, and then execute. I think simplification is one thing that I've been very laser focused on, because I think when things go wrong, in many cases, the number of KPIs goes up instead of going down. And we've eliminated a ton of KPIs, a lot of things that don't really add value. So simplification, laser focused on the objectives and on the executions. And, sometimes your plan is not perfect, you adjust. That's what this industry is about, is getting clear direction, execute the plan, and then adjust when needed. And that's what we're focused on.
Great. Christian Meunier, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own John Irwin for his reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from Peter Siegel of our sibling publication, Automotive News Europe. You can get the latest news on Nissan's turnaround efforts, trade policy, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Genesis COO Ted Mingeste.
The foundations of our brand have always been great designs, great interiors, and then we married up performance with it.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.